7:04 p.m. This is Aaron Van de Steen, the chair of the Grafton Public Library Board of Trustees Policy Committee. As a preliminary matter, I think I just identified myself as the chair, Aaron Van de Steen. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond the affirmative. Beth Schreiber.
Here. John.
John is here. Okay. And John Bobrisky.
That's me.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So good evening. This open meeting of the Grafton Public Library Board of Trustees Policy Subcommittee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. I will say this meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Grafton Public Library Board of Trustees Policy Committee is convening via Zoom video conference as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and that take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along on using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda, and after they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will read first public comments, questions received in advance of the meeting, followed by real-time board and/or applicant responses. Public comments during the meeting will be conducted through the chat feature on Zoom. I will read real-time comments, questions typed by the computer participants in the chat feature, followed by real-time board or applicant responses. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay. So on the agenda, I believe we have approval of minutes. I don't know that those were provided yet. Did I miss them?
Debbie would have sent them out. I reviewed them and sent them back to her to give to everybody.
Okay. I don't know that I've seen them. Hold on. I think I got my wrong earbud. Can you hear me a little better? Kind of. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Okay, so I don't think I'm prepared to accept the minutes because I didn't get the opportunity to read them. John, I mean, clearly Beth, you have it, and so has Debbie. But John, have you had the chance to read them?
No, I don't think I saw the minutes either.
Okay, so why don't we table that for the next meeting and just I'll touch base with Debbie. And if somehow we missed it, then, that's on us. But if not, then I'll just make sure that when she's feeling better, that we can get a copy of them. So,
They were sent out on the 2nd of November to all of us,
okay,
so we can table.
yeah, I mean, I
When
don't
you
want
said-
to, read them right now, if they are sent out, so thank you. I'll make a note of that to take a look. So to ongoing business, the first policy on the agenda is the draft art display policy. So I might have an old copy of it, Beth. I don't know if you have one.
So again, I unfortunately cannot access anything on Town of Grafton shares from my home computer all of a sudden today. So I can't pull up anything except for what might be on our website, and it's a new policy, so I have no.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we were gonna bring it to legal. I did have an appointment scheduled to meet with Ginny, town council.
Yeah.
The 30th, no, sorry, the 23rd last week. But there was no school and we needed coverage in the teen room and I had to cancel that appointment to sit at the desk. And I
Okay.
don't know when her next availability is going to be.
Okay.
I don't have anything new.
Yeah, that's a fine update. So I think the next action item is just to set up a new date to meet with them. Okay. Moving on, the security camera policy update. So I've been looking through this one. Are there specific updates that you feel would be necessary for this policy?
Sure. So this one, Ginny did answer by email. I had asked if we were allowed or able to write into our policy that we are not able to provide any camera footage, even upon request.
Yep.
For areas that the cameras do not cover. So therefore, library interior, library exterior grounds. We have one camera that kind of captures some of what happens on like cars pulling out onto Upton Street and passing in front of the Grafton Inn. But not very much. But if people are getting into car accidents, like in front of 1 Grafton Common and requesting camera footage. And I have to say, well, you can fill out this form, but our camera coverage does not extend to where you're asking for footage for. Same for right outside of the front of the building on South Street by Grafton Common. That camera actually points at the door and the stairs and doesn't even extend to the circular walkway, let alone out to the street and the common. So I would like to sort of circumvent the email back and forth of, does your camera cover it? No, we don't, but here's the request form. And her response was actually, even though the policy, we drafted a camera footage request form to go with it that she approved. She said what actually needs to happen is that people would have to do a public records request to get that footage from us. But then she didn't really answer the, can we write into the policy? Like, don't even bother to ask. The camera footage just doesn't point at those street views that people are asking for. So it's another, like, we need to sit down in person. But there is an indication that the form that we've been using, again, that was approved, is not the appropriate form for anybody looking for camera footage. Again, could be for parking lot incidents or interior in the library incidents. So.
Yeah. Okay. The only time that, at least at my employer, they have a lot of cameras on the property. Occasionally, the town police will ask for footage if there was an accident.
Mm-hmm.
So being a public library does, and this might be a question for legal, is the precedent a little bit different where for a private business, the police have to ask, but, for a public library, a patron can fill out a form and ask for footage. I don't know if it's the same or not.
Yeah, whether it's the police asking or a patron asking, someone has to fill out a form, but her response to me was an indication that we have the wrong form, that it isn't just that we don't have to make a specific security camera footage request form to be appended to the policy, but that they just do a regular public records request, which is like a legal form, and there's a very specific timeline to be followed where you have to respond within a week, and then they have like, whatever amount of time to accept the request back. Or
Mhm.
I've had to do it for I forget the word for wage requests in the past.
Okay. So are there any specific changes to the current policy that we need to review tonight?
I don't think so, not until we have more clarification from her, but I anticipate that there may be a change that says that instead of filling out a security camera footage request form, that members who want footage or anybody who wants footage would have to fill out a different form, and it probably won't limit the scope, and we'll still have to deal with. Nope, doesn't cover it. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I see page 2, line 3 under use and disclosure video records. There's a link to request video footage form. So after you speak with legal, that may come out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Any further discussion on the security camera footage form?
John has his hand up.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just I read through the policy, and there was mention of, providing the footage, and I was just wondering if we've tested the new system. I assume it's a new system because it's a new building. Tested the system to make sure that it is recording. I think it was like 14 days back. And then how we would provide that to somebody else. Is that something that we can easily do to kind of like export that footage or save it somewhere else?
I wouldn't say that it's easy, but it's doable, and it records more than 14 days. Like it seems to be archived in the cloud, and it goes back pretty far. I and several other staff members have been trained in how to do it, and we have written instructions for how to do it. And I have successfully pulled footage and shared it with the police department for an incident on site. I would say that one issue is that the cameras aren't, you can zoom them in while you're looking at current footage, but you can't go back and zoom in and get clear images from anything that's been recorded in the past. So they are actually not very helpful in identifying, say, facial features or license plates, unfortunately. And I have an issue with some of the placement, and have been working with American Alarm to get a quote to move or relocate or reposition some cameras for better coverage inside the building. Mostly we have a lot and very good coverage for the parking lot, but not great coverage for as you come in and out of the building, or even like spaces, corridors, and emergency exits within the building. But the camera system does work, and it records and exports.
All right, cool.
So would the security company be able to give you the best practices for the amount of cameras you have, or is it really you just kind of giving them guidance on, I really need this to point here, I need this to point there, or are they working on a consulting basis where they're saying, well, you really need to have it pointing here and not at the door because of this reason?
I provided guidance at the time of construction that was disregarded. So I now have a second party who's our regular alarm company who said, yeah, I don't know why they did this, and it doesn't give you the coverage that you need, and we'll work on a quote for you to reposition something.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the camera security policy? Security camera policy. Okay, great. On to new business, the meeting room facility rental policy review. Remind me if this was on the agenda, because Stephanie, the library trustee, had some feedback on how to better maximize the room's use and or get in some additional revenue.
Yeah, so there was one issue that she had run into trying to book a room for a Saturday when we were open, a paid private event, which is against the policy. But also, meeting room use started a year ago in November 2021, and because it was a new policy, I thought it made sense to review it more recent, rather than waiting, say, 3 years to take another look at it. And I actually asked staff for feedback, particularly around block booking, which seems to be our biggest issue around meeting room use. So let me know what you want to tackle.
Well, why don't we start with staff feedback?
Sure. One of the things it says in the policy is that the library or its meeting spaces are not to become a permanent residence of any one group in town. And it doesn't say no block booking, which is when you say Toastmasters is going to meet every other Wednesday from September to May, and we want that community room A from 7 to 8:45 for the whole year. And some libraries allow that kind of booking. But we wanted lots of turnover and lots of new groups using it. So it's been case by case basis, which means if your Toastmasters group is going to meet every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, you have to submit a single meeting request, complete that meeting, and then once that meeting is done, you can put in a request for the room for the next meeting if it's available. And I thought that we might be at a point where we're really not turning people away from meeting room use and could allow groups to do some block booking. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts in particular, a condo association that might meet monthly, visiting nurses associations, that kind of, civic minded groups. But staff said that no, they prefer that we don't have groups monopolizing the rooms and like the system that we have, which is you finish your booking and then you can book your next meeting.
So can I provide the first comment on that?
Sure.
I mean, the way that it's working now, if I book a room and I can't book, more than one meeting at a time. So I book it, for tonight, say I book this room here. When our meeting's done, nobody's going to be standing here waiting to try to beat me to get that meeting in. Do you know what I mean? For next Wednesday. It would be very rare that somebody would be doing that. And they could, but if I really want that room, I'm going to get it every time. So, to your point, block booking might not, I think it's no different than what we're currently doing. And it gives, some groups in town who really love the library and love the space and want to meet there. The stability of not having to worry about, well, where we're going to meet next month. So, I mean, we're already doing that today. I don't disagree. You might be opening up a can of worms with block booking, but I would say if other libraries can do it, then, why can't we? But is there a way to allow other groups, use of the room through policy? So 2 groups who want to meet on Wednesday, I mean, let's say all 7 nights of the week are booked up at the same, for the same room. Well, I guess I'm never getting a room, right? How do we prevent that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so the policy actually says that it's discretion of the director, trustees, or their designee. So we can make an executive decision that says, you've monopolized it, not just for your monthly meeting, but now you're adding in your leader meeting and your other planning meeting and now another meeting. And now you've got not, one meeting every week or every other week, but now you've taken up 8 nights and it's time to give somebody else a turn. So, we might say, well, you're fine for this month, but next month you need to take a break and let somebody else have a turn. Mm-hmm. Then you do run the risk of the room sitting empty. Another thing that's kind of a workaround is a group might have more than one person who can convene the meeting room. So kind of a simple solution is they just put it in somebody else's name.
Sure.
And, like I said, we're not really too much turning people away with not block booking. And what happens is if somebody puts in a series of meetings, we'll approve the first one. And then I put a note that says you can approve the next session on this date after that other meeting has been held. So it's kind of you're probably going to get it. And we've honored them and let them use the space.
So let me ask you how the municipal center has been able to do it all these years. Maybe we bring in Cindy Ide and kind of ask her, what are the conflicts? Because I'm sure maybe we should operate the same way the municipal center does.
So they have municipal meetings. You're required, so Beth Patch used to do this. She would put in the trustee schedule to try and get, I think we liked room A where I think it's room A, where the cameras were, so we could have our meeting recorded. But there are multiple other groups that met on whatever it was, the fourth Wednesday. So there was always a get your form in so you can get that second Wednesday or fourth Wednesday, in like July or September for the whole next calendar year. So it made it a little competitive. And, we were told though, at one point, I think we had to move our meeting date, which wasn't a huge deal. So one of the things that I see people doing now is, well, Scouts wanted to meet, it's like Girl Scouts wanted to meet. Usually they meet at 7 or 6:30, but the room's not available. So they just shifted their meeting from, 4 to 5:30 instead, and they have some flexibility. I think one of the other concerns though, is that if we allow block booking and so 10 groups decide that they are going to schedule their meeting, and they do, and then the library isn't on the ball, the staff aren't on the ball and don't schedule their programming and use of the larger space in a timely manner, then they will be blocked out of using the meeting spaces. And it does say in the policy that the primary function of the meeting rooms is for library programming use. So then there's also that conflict. And while it does say in the policy that we reserve the right to cancel reservations, even with very short notice, and we would help people find additional or alternative accommodations, we could technically say, yeah, I know that you plan to have your meeting, but it's the start of summer reading program. This is when we can get our presenter, and we're going to bump you for a program or meeting. And, that's going to cause complaints, legitimately so. I do feel like the policy as it is currently written does allow for plenty of flexibility. And I would say the only change I would suggest is that we could try allowing for block bookings for the next 3 or 4 months and see how the room bookings go. And if people are truly either monopolizing or not getting the spaces that they want to meet. But it would actually be a little less work for staff to approve a whole bunch of meetings at once than to be going back and checking all of the time. And it would really be peace of mind for now, I know John's a scout leader, for our scout troops especially, to be able to say, yeah, we are definitely meeting at the library for, the next 4 months.
Yeah.
For them.
I'd be okay with limiting, recurring meetings that you could only do maybe 3 meetings in a row. So 3 meetings could be 3 months. It could be 3 years. It could be, it could be, 3 weeks or 3 days, right?
Somebody would have to track it. And that would be a logistical challenge. And our meeting room software only has, it sounds like a lot. We have 1,800 events. And we get 100 bookings a month or more, just with the public, and then another 50 or 60 library programs. So we're not able to keep an extensive record for how many times in a row somebody has, used the meeting. So.
Well, what I would say is if the software could limit it to only, how you can set up a recurrence, it could only set up, 3 recurrences, and then somebody would have to renew it.
Yeah, the software actually doesn't allow it. So an individual has to put in, you can't, on our end, we could book out like 3 or 4 or 6 group meetings, but a patron could not request recurring meetings, and the software won't allow it. What they can do though is request over and over this date, and then 2 weeks out, and then another 2 weeks out. So, and that's even, work for the patron to have to go in and put in all of that information over and over. The software just doesn't do it for you or allow for it.
John, do you have any feedback? Say you wanted to meet with your group, for the next 3 months, once a month. And then, so you could submit those 3 days, and then you'd be required to submit more time if you wanted to get that room again. Would that be acceptable? And is that any different from kind of what we're doing today? I think it gives you the peace of mind that yes, we can meet, our next 3 meetings are at the library, and then you can go back and say, okay, the next 3 meetings, I rebooked them. It's available that night. The next 3 meetings will be at the library again.
Yeah. So the way we've used it is to book like kind of one-off meetings. So I think we're actually meeting there tomorrow because we want to use the screen, the projector and stuff. But I think last winter, we essentially wanted to book out not a lot of the winter, I'd say, but I think it would be nice to be able to book out like a month. So basically like 3 to 5 meetings, whatever, that a given month would be, because we meet weekly, and that would be kind of what we would want to do. I know, or I believe that most of the troops and packs and things have like a primary meeting space. But again, the library is just such a nice facility, and it has the projector, that, there are times, again, during the winter and stuff, when it's nice to meet in that nice warm space. And especially if we're like the only ones meeting that night from our given pack, for example, we don't have to worry about making sure someone has the keys to unlock our space, which is the Congregational Church. So so I'd say being able to book out like a month would be nice. I know that was definitely, a minor annoyance to have to like just re-put it in, and kind of worry a little bit that the time slots could be taken, because there are times when we try to plan out the meetings again a month in advance or more. So yeah, that's kind of how we've been trying to use it.
So Beth, is that doable with the current technology?
So the technology, it's a staff thing. It's totally a change in procedure for staff as opposed to the technology. I do want to share Anne Marie Foley's comment. I would think booking a month out should be reasonable and perhaps easier for staff to block that time. So. And
actually, I just thought of this. Since we're like a weekly meeting, being able to book out a month makes a lot of sense for us. But I'm wondering if there's like a monthly meeting, if they can book out something like 6 months in advance. Just a thought.
Yeah, again, I think that the current policy doesn't prevent it. It's just something we try to do procedurally and internally to make sure that there's plenty of turnover. And when I asked staff for feedback and said, can we try block booking? They all went, oh, no, no. I'm willing to try it. I think that it could work.
Okay. Well, I think procedurally, I would support that too. Again, the staff or the director, right, have the ability to say, oh, well, I show up and I haven't requested the room, but I really need it. And there's already a group that's booked out, 6 months. Oh, well, let me get in touch with that group and I'll see if they can change the timing so that you can have the room, since it's just kind of a one-off request, right? So I think that's the conversations that the staff have already been having. Like I remember, I think it was Karen who mentioned something about the technology or the Wi-Fi or something in one of the rooms, and the staff was very responsive to reach out to her and say, hey, it's not working, the technology you need. She could have said, oh, we have the technology available in this room. You know what I mean? So there's that conversation, that dialogue. And I know it's a bit of work for the staff, but, I think that's kind of what we expect, right? Is to reach out if, somebody's kind of block book something for a while. So.
And then can you see the comments? Do you want to share any of those comments?
Sure. Yeah. I've got one from Nancy P. It says, I know the RTC would like a room one night a month, and we schedule meetings months out. So maybe 4 bookings at a time instead of a month at a time. 6, and then Ann Foley, 6 months seems like a long period. Some folks book out that far and perhaps don't utilize the space consistently. Yeah, I mean, both of those, well, certainly to Ann Foley's point, I mean, the library trustees meet on the same night every month. right? So, we would, if we had a room, we'd be booking out an entire year's worth of meetings. But yeah, I mean, if somebody's not using it consistently, then again, if somebody else needs the room that night, then it's up to the staff to reach out to that group. And one night a month, and we schedule meetings months out, maybe 4 bookings at a time instead of a month at a time. Yeah. So that's just a procedural thing, like you said, Beth, it's not software.
Yeah, I think what I would do is communicate to staff, we're going to try doing up to 4 in a row, whether that's once a week, 4 days in a row, 4 months in a row, depending on, because we have tutors or people who have independent meetings, or who are studying for exams or taking practice exams, who also they finish their meeting reservation, and then before we close, they go directly to the desk and reserve again for the next day, which is great. So 4 in a row seems like it would be a good number to try.
Yeah, I would totally support that. And I think saw John's head nodding too. That's really what I meant about recurrence, is just being able to book, it could be 4 weeks, 4 days, 4 months. Great feedback. Thank you for the chat comments as well. So Beth, you'll take that with the support of the policy committee and try that. Excellent.
Right, and I'll report back next month.
Yeah.
And then the other issue on the table, I think, is more related to facility rental, which I'm planning to just pull the plug and implement, frankly, in January, whether we have our lock for our gate or not, because it's kind of ridiculous that it's gone on for a year that we're just not ready to do it. We have a key card set up, and we can close the gate, and we do have a method for unlocking it that doesn't require the key. So we can make it available for Friday night, Saturday night, and anytime on Sunday. I could give a key card to somebody and come up with a procedure to store some things maybe and see how it goes. The issue that came up though is somebody who wanted a Saturday night rental and was not satisfied with, you can come in at 6 and set up and then start your program anytime after 6. That the library is open to the public until 6 p.m. Whether we have the room booked for a library program or free event or public meeting or not, if the policy is that facility rental is only for after hours use because we cannot allow any private paid use during library operating hours, the person wanted to come in at 4 o'clock while the library was open to set up for their party, which I think is a violation of the policy. We can make an exception, but I'm interested in your feedback.
Yeah. So the current policy for meeting use, not facilities rental, but meeting use, right, would be that unless it's a private function, which do we allow during the day? I thought we did allow private use of rooms during the day, as long as it was they were paying for the time, right?
So nobody is paying for time when the library is open to the public. So it's like if you're having a tutoring session, you're using the room for free, but the caveat is that per the policy, that meeting can be interrupted or attended by anybody at any time. It is technically free and open to the public.
Right.
People don't barge in on Girl Scout meetings or private tutoring or phone calls or anything like that. But we wouldn't allow, I think the example I used last time is a real estate agent, say, who wants to do a home buying seminar and charge people $150 to come for a 6-hour seminar and provide them lunch. Like, we wouldn't do that on a Saturday when we were open to the public, because then any person walking in should be allowed to go to that meeting and attend it for free, not as a paid private event. So that realtor would have to rent the space for a Sunday to do a session where they're going to make money on it. Now, we could partner with a realtor and pay them $150 to do a free program for the public. But not the patron has to pay, or the patron is barred entry from attending. So if you are setting up your private event or party at 4 o'clock on Friday to start when the library closes at 6, like, that's kind of just a sticky gray area. It means that nobody can use the room for free and public use while the library is open, and that people who want to go, oh, what's going on in there? Like, technically they're barred entry to that public space.
Yeah, but per the policy, I mean, they are allowed to kind of poke in and walk around. Like I could only, the only issue that I would have with somebody doing that is if they wanted to start their program, their private party at like 4 p.m. in
Okay.
bar public access. You know, even if they wanted to start at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. and they book the room. I mean, it's open to the public. Like they couldn't kick somebody out because of the policy. It's interesting, right? So you brought up the topic of tutoring, like tutoring rooms, that are really kind of it's a private meeting. Per the meeting room policy, would I be able to go in and sit down and attend that tutoring, right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to, or, so I think there is some at least semblance of privacy when you book a room, right? If it's like a public function room, are we just saying a room rental is a room rental, and whoever rented it, it's their time? I don't know. They're kind of two different types of rooms, right? And it's hard to kind of just be so black and white.
Yeah. Well, we could, the devil's advocate here, we could argue that the tutoring spaces were offering that space for free for a tutor to make money tutoring. Yeah. And I just don't like the example I gave was like, we're not allowing a realtor to rent the space, to even rent the space and make money when we're open. So, yeah, and this kind of came up with our piano policy too, where we said we shouldn't be using the community meeting room or piano for like a piano teacher to come in and use the space and earn money kind of like through the library. So
yep,
it's hard to find a consistency that works and is really fair for everybody, I think.
Yeah. So maybe tutoring isn't the right example. Let's use John's Cub Scout meeting, right? I mean, it's not really appropriate for adults to be attending something that's a children's group, but there are other adults in the room, who are the leaders. So if me as an uninvited adult wanted to go sit in there, the policy would say that I could, right? But it's not like they're unsupervised children. I don't know. I mean, John, I think that's kind of the not the risk you take by having the meeting at the library, but it's kind of comes with the territory, right? You're meeting in a public library, so people could poke their heads in and listen in, and maybe they end up, say, oh, my son would love Cub Scouts. I just want to sit in and listen, and then they go home and you get another, recruit.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of the Cub Scouts, I believe the meetings are technically like open. So if someone does want to like observe the meetings, that's, as long as they're not being weird or inappropriate or something like that, or disrupting the meeting, I think that's actually a normal Cub Scout policy. So yeah, so that would, I mean, in that case, it's kind of fine with us. Specifically about the setting up at 4 o'clock thing on like a Friday. It makes sense to me that someone would want to do that. But at the same time, like you said, we wouldn't want to necessarily give them that space. So maybe it's something that's, give them that space in lieu of someone else who needs it, kind of. So maybe it's just at the discretion of the person approving the booking, so that if for whatever reason Friday at 4 o'clock is a really busy time for meetings at the library, then maybe we just say, sorry, we can't do this because we get a lot of meetings booked in the space that you are trying to rent. Assuming that's not the case though, and that the large meeting rooms are open at 4 o'clock on a Friday, I wouldn't really see much of an issue, I don't think, with allowing them to book an additional 2 hours to reserve that space. I guess the bigger issue is like, you may need to have kind of put the onus on them to watch their own stuff, right? To say like, we're not responsible for where your stuff goes. If you leave the room, it's up to you to keep an eye on your things and monitor that. But if there's an issue where it's like a patron wouldn't leave that room for whatever reason, then you could get the library staff and be to show that you have booked this room, and you're paying for it. So I think as long as like the bookings aren't the paid bookings aren't really like interfering with normal usage of those rooms, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think where the problem, I'll give you an example, and this is probably where Beth is coming from. Let's say I wanted to get, have an anniversary party, next October. And let's say I could book it out that far, right? So I want to set up at 4 p.m. And so I book it out, 6 to 8 months in advance. And now that room is not available to the public because I've kind of locked it up with an event that, we don't know how busy October is. It could be a very busy time for meeting room use. And I just locked it up with my private event. So is that kind of where your head's at, Beth? Like, you don't know that it's, going to be, it may not be booked right now, but 8 months from now, it could be.
Yeah, I think my bigger concern is, do we charge or not for that setup time? And now we're charging for private use while we're open to the public.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right. I mean, we could say we waive the setup fee.
Well, is there any rules against charging for the room during the time that we're open to the public? I guess.
I don't know. I could bring that to legal and to Mass Board of Library Commissioners, because again, like, we're free public library, right? So.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are that 4 o'clock on a Friday doesn't seem like it would be a busy time for the large meeting spaces, which I think is kind of what we're talking about in booking for a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday evening. And again, like, I guess maybe especially if the library is open during the time when if there's some overlap, maybe we say you are allowed to book the meeting space 2 hours before your event starts, but we'll charge you an additional, maybe you just charge them the normal rate, because again, they are taking up that space. So it does make sense to charge them for that. I'm not sure about something like the real estate seminar type situation though, where that would take up the meeting space all day during normal hours. That I feel like that's a different conversation.
Okay, I think what I heard is Beth can find out if it's appropriate to charge during those additional 2 hours while the library's open, right? My guess is even if they say no, it's not appropriate to charge, while the public library is open, it could just be a loophole, and we accept it until it becomes a problem. Somebody gets the room for a couple hours to do their setup. But again, like John said, it's got to be open and available to the public who wants to pop in, and whoever's setting up in that room is responsible for their own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sorry, just to clarify, I was implying that it is, if they booked again like 2 hours while the library is open, again as part of that setup time, that it would not be open to the public. And again, I'm kind of making the assumption that on a Friday at 4 o'clock, no one's using that room. And assuming no one's using that room, there's kind of like no visible harm in allowing someone to pay for that space. And that helps the library. It helps the person wanting to book the space. And since no one's using that room, there's no kind of harm done. But again, it would have to be done at discretion. They can't book the room for the whole day necessarily, to have that whole setup time, whatever kind of setup they would want to have there.
Yeah, I think I understand, John. And really what it was is charge for those 2 hours. And it's a private, and Beth is going to find out, or don't charge for the 2 hours and it's open to the public for those 2 hours until their private meeting starts at 6.
Again, not that like anyone's gonna come in and say, oh, let me help you move tables. That sounds fun with your family. Like, probably not. The other thing is, it doesn't take 2 hours to set up that room. And we're pretty restricted in like, you can't hang up signs and balloons and tape things to the wall and hang streamers. So it's
Yeah.
pretty limited in the setup that you can do. I bet that the person who asked is also looking for, the band needs to test their sound. And that's why they want some extra.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. Which, okay, might be loud at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Okay. Any further discussion? And welcome, Debbie.
I am so sorry. I have been sick all week and I completely blanked out on what night it was. And my husband's like, don't you have a Zoom meeting that started a while ago? I'm like, oh, geez, sorry. I'll catch up with the recording for the notes.
I didn't remind you because I'm assuming you're sicker than I am.
It's a toss up. It's a toss up, man. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, by all means, we have a full quorum. I don't think there's anything that we need to vote on tonight. So feel free to drop off if you'd like to. And like you said, you can totally look over the recording unless you feel that you want to join the meeting and follow along for the last bit of it. It's up to you.
I'll just hang out for the last little bit of it. That way I at least have that part done since I'm already here.
Okay, great. Okay, so any further discussion regarding the facility rental policy review? Okay. Hearing none, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the parking policy.
So I have to confess, I haven't looked at this again. My issue is we drafted a policy and approved it when we were originally at 35 Grafton Common, and then we had different parking issues when we went to St. Andrews and revised it. And now we're back at 35 Grafton Common. And one of the things that we have that's new is charging stations. So I drafted like a electronic vehicle charging station policy, but I think that needs to be shared and probably combined with the parking policy. And I don't have anything beyond that to discuss about parking.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty good how it stands now, but if you feel that there's some additional bit you want to add regarding electrical vehicle charging stations, we can wait till you're ready to present those revisions. That's fine.
I think one thing to consider is that the current parking policy says no overnight parking, but there are people who might want to come and park and charge overnight, and that's a revenue generator.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah, so like those are the lines of my concerns.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Okay.
Oh, and Debbie's got a hand up.
Sorry, I'm looking at the policy. Go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, I was just wondering, just because we haven't really discussed this at all, are we thinking about adding anything to the policy as far as damage to the electric chargers, since we are getting ready to pay $350 for a new pole for a charger because somebody backed into it?
Well, if we are going to consider that, I mean, that would come with Beth's revision, right? So we'll leave that. My personal opinion is, and again, you don't have any footage of what happened to try to hold anybody liable, nor good enough definition to look at somebody's license plate and, charge their insurance, the damage fee. what other sort of damages could we talk about in the parking lot, right? If somebody hit a light pole, like who would be responsible for that? There's all kinds of damages that can be done in a parking lot, including the vehicle charging stations. Is that something that the town has ownership over that would have been covered by the insurance policy?
So Anne Marie just commented, if there's damage, naturally you should pursue an insurance claim. So we turned over camera footage to the police and showed footage of the patron to staff, and nobody can, the police could not get a read on a license plate, and the staff do not recognize the patron. We don't, seems like we don't have any recourse to pursue that.
Even so, I mean, an insurance deductible, I don't know what costs more. It probably the deductible than the $350 to repair it.
Okay.
So I don't know, what does the town say? Is this
I
really
haven't brought it to the town, but I can. I just said that I would give footage to the police department, and what I sent them, they said we can't, but we don't have a way to zoom in or clarify to see the license plate. We don't recognize the vehicle. Ask your staff if they know the person, and the staff do not. So
would you bring that to Evan's attention?
yeah, we can bring it to Evan.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I feel like if we own those charging stations, then it's, library town property. But if we don't own them, we're just kind of leasing, renting them. Do you know what the agreement is? If it's just they provide the credit card service, or if we own, yeah.
I think they provide the service. I would assume we own the poles. I can find that out.
Okay. So depending on the outcome of that conversation, we'll determine if we want to put that in the parking policy regarding charging.
Okay. I do believe it does say in our code of conduct that people will be held liable for damage to library property.
Yeah.
So I would think that would also encompass it, but it wouldn't hurt to reference it if we needed to put it there too.
I mean, $350 isn't cheap, but you could imagine something more expensive, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500, and then the library would be obligated to pay it. I feel like it's an insurance claim item, but so yeah, please let me know or us know what happens with your conversation with the town.
Okay. And then there was just another comment from Anne-Marie. Encouraging us not to restrict parking at the library after hours. Our policy is technically library parking only during library business hours, but it's not really posted or enforced. It's definitely not enforced, even when we put up the sign.
Yep.
She also said that most cars should be fully charged by 4 to 8 hours. Am I correct? That is my point to Debbie's comment.
I wouldn't know. I don't have an electric vehicle.
I don't either. I would hope that they would be charged after 4 to 8 hours, I guess. Especially, I think those are probably like faster chargers than what you would have, just plugging it in at home. No, the comment above that was to Debbie's comment. And yes, most vehicles would not require overnight charge.
Okay, great. I mean, you don't want to have abandoned vehicles. So I think that's kind of where the no overnight parking kind of covers that. Right? So
it also becomes an issue, not to interrupt, it becomes an issue in the winter for plowing. So if, say, a neighbor becomes used to always leaving their vehicle instead of, like, there's no street parking on South Street, say, parking in the library's lot overnight because nobody's there and it's not a big deal, and then we have snowstorms and we can't clear our lot if somebody's using it for their parking lot.
Yeah. And somebody wants to sleep in their car in the library parking lot, maybe they have too much to drink and they just want to park there before they head home. I mean, I guess it's a police issue, but yeah, I think Anne's comment, kind of supported that you really wouldn't need to leave a car overnight to charge it. So, okay.
So she did say, Anne's comment was also that I would encourage you to not restrict parking at the library after hours. So I think in the policy it had said something that you were allowed to use the parking after hours. I think it was for like library business, basically using the Wi-Fi, dropping off materials. I think there was one other thing. So I think I agree with that, just given, again, limited parking around the area, that maybe we, once the library's closed, then it's okay for people to park there, maybe still restrict it to not overnight for the reasons that we already mentioned, but
Yeah. So John, this has been kind of a conversation for a while about the library. And to Beth's point, we don't we don't really ask people not to park there. There's no posted signs that say you can't park there.
We do occasionally, when we have a library event, if there's a competing town event. So like on Wednesday nights on Wednesday night this summer, we had concerts on the Common, and we also had 2 different library programs that we had scheduled at the same time. And we had people who were coming to library programs who couldn't park because of all the parking from people who were parking and then going across the street.
Yeah.
So we had a sign that said library parking only. Again, we weren't being parking lot police. We noted when people complained. We had no attendees for one of the programs. And our solution is, going forward, we're not going to schedule anything on Wednesday evenings because we know people are going to go to the great concerts on the Common that the rec department is providing. But it is a grant stipulation and an assurance that we had to sign off on when we got our grant, that the parking would be for library use only. And that's been like a bone of contention that I keep explaining.
Yeah.
We started this process. So
Yep.
we may be required, we should have put up permanent signage, and we still don't have signage that says library parking only. We probably at some point are going to have to put up permanent signage in the parking lot that says library parking only. I will enforce it when it becomes an issue of, again, like, people can't park to return their books and come into programs because everyone's going to something at the end.
Yeah. So I've been a long time library patron. And the old parking lot was even worse, right? When there were things going on in the Common, and I couldn't find a place to park when I had stuff to do at the library. So my point is that leave the policy the way it is, because if Beth needs something to support, asking somebody that you really can't park here because we need the space for library programming while the library's open, here's a policy that says so, right? She can enforce it only when she feels that she needs to, right? But generally, it's okay for people to park there. I think that's the reason why we wrote it that way.
Yeah, and truly, like, even if you're going to the concert on the Common on Wednesday, you park in the back of the library, you walk through the library and stop and go to the bathroom, you've used the library. Like, that counts. It's good enough, really. You looked at the book display, great. It's okay. And there was I don't know if there was a parking provision with the old building, but I did inherit a very clear sense that the trustees owned that parking lot because they paid to put in that parking lot. However many years ago, there were only, I think, 28 spaces, and there was no overnight parking permitted. And there were, in fact, signs that my predecessor had that he would go and put on vehicles that were illegally parked at the library. Which I never wanted that to be my job. So.
Okay. I think there's another comment in the chat here. Not overnight parking is fine. Okay, so we got past that. No, there were posted signs this summer. So thank you for reading my chats. I understand you have the grant provision. However, I have definitely had many people show concern about this issue. There are no restrictions on the old library, though, correct? Beth, I think you just.
I would have to go back and look at the parking lot policy.
And
I don't remember.
If I could get clarification on something, do we know if the grant is specific to library hours, like the hours the library is open, or if it's just flat out it's meant to be used for library parking around the clock?
I can pull it up and take a look, but what I wanted to enforce was library parking only during library hours of operation or during library related events, which would include, I'm getting married on Sunday, I've paid the facility use fee, and I expect my guests to be able to show up and park, even if there's something going on Grafton Common that Sunday. I paid for the use of the space, and that includes the whole facility. And I think at that point, we would also put up a library parking only sign. There wouldn't be any staff there to enforce it, though. They would have to hire their own detail to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, it is not a municipal lot.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. Any further discussion regarding the library parking policy? Okay, so we will look forward to Beth's additions regarding the electric vehicle charging, and also after her conversations with the town, regarding damages to the library or parking lot property, including the charging stations. Great. So I believe we've hit the end of our agenda. Let me see here. So the next item is public input. We had a few chats, but I'd like to open the floor to anybody who would like to provide public input.
Anne Marie did have a last comment before she left.
It says, is it a lot funded by the taxpayers, though? 45% of the cost of that library was NBLC grant, which there were many grant stipulations on how the building needed to be, laid out and how many spaces for a building that size. So yes, that money came from the taxpayers, but the town voted to accept the MBLC money. So there were stipulations on how that lot could be used.
And interestingly enough, the grant is broken down into eligible and ineligible reimbursable costs. And setting up the lot is an eligible cost with a reimbursement, but the paving is not. So we actually did put the full cost of paving as well as landscaping and other costs.
Okay.
Yeah, striping. So I see her point and don't understand.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, any further public input? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is setting our next meeting. I will open the floor for suggestions, and I'll pull up my own calendar at the same time here. Oh, I will say that the next library trustee meeting, I'll be unable to attend. I've spoken with Karen about this, so I've been excused. However, I would like somebody else from the policy committee to be available to at least give an update on this meeting, and then to address any questions if any other trustees have questions.
Yeah, I can do that. Should we do a quick summary of what should be presented?
Well, Debbie, do you think you'll have the minutes from this meeting before the next trustee meeting, so John can kind of look through it and summarize it?
Yes, I'll get them done this week or the beginning of next week.
Okay. Does that work, John?
Yeah. Yep.
Great, perfect. Thank you, John. Okay. So the next meeting, I would say, unless we have something back from legal to review, I would say January is probably when we want to meet next, unless we feel we want to meet before Christmas. Do you think you'll be able to get some time with legal sooner than later, Beth?
I don't know when she's next scheduled, so I
Mhm.
probably not.
Okay.
At least our trustee meeting.
Yeah, I don't want to really meet the week of Christmas, nor the week of New Year's. So I would say probably the next reasonable meeting is Wednesday, January 4th. Okay. Great. I saw some nods, so I will accept that as agreement. That our next meeting will be January 4th, 2023. Okay. And then the last item on the agenda is looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second, Beth.
Motion made and second. All in favor? Aaron, aye. John,
John, aye.
Beth,
Aye.
and Debbie.
Aye.
Great. I declare the motion carried and the meeting ended.